We are back talking Heroic Disgrace with the author Scott Box. And we're picking up where we left off with Kryptonite. This is part 2. If you missed it, go back and check out part 1. We're talking about parent pleasing. We're talking about gaming in relationships. Not at all what we set out to talk about, but here we are. So in the beginning of your relationship, you talked about with Carrie Ann, when you got married, you went out and you bought the new Xbox. She didn't talk to you for a week.
Oh yeah,
Okay,
it was a full week.
Yeah. So
it was weird. That was weird. That was weird for us.
That was weird. That was a weird time.
And the joke with that was, don't lose your question, but the joke was, and it's silly, but it was that Carrie Ann almost became an Xbox over an Xbox. Yes. Anyway. So
yes.
Yeah.
So you don't want to. Yeah. You don't ever want to alienate your wife based on decisions you're making.
Yeah.
So.
Or in front of a friend, like I did.
Well, yeah, and he had a lot to do with this. He got y'all fired up, pulled the string, let you go, and off you went. Got the Xbox.
There goes Scott.
And he's just at home like, hope I didn't wreck the marriage. I guess.
We're still good friends.
Good. Okay. So things are good.
friends.
He's married still. I hope everything's good with him.
Excuse me.
Good.
Yeah.
So good decisions.
He's good. He is.
Good decisions as far as Kryptonite. So the Kryptonite in this situation was that you did not think about how to please your wife first in this situation, because at this point of your life, newly married, you still were a little bit more focused on pleasing your parents, your dad especially, and not as focused on pleasing your wife. Can you break that down a little?
Well, you say it really, really well. I mean, that's the gist of it. I had not made the transition in my mind to pleasing, if you will, or being a united front, if you will, with my wife, and making even decisions together. And at that point in time, the Xbox, I think, was $500, or it was $300 to $500. We were newly married. We did not have that money, and yet I felt like it was my right. And
did you lose all financial decisions?
Oh
after
well,
this?
eventually. Excuse me. Eventually, I did, but for different reasons. But for different reasons.
Okay. Well, this has to be part of it. I mean, you built a foundation.
And we're now building into the reasons why Scott does not handle finances.
Nice, great, okay.
But so I would just say that you're right. The desire that I had to please my dad did not or had not transferred to my willingness or desire to make decisions together with Carrie Ann.
Nice. Okay, so the Kryptonite we're going to talk about here is parent pleasing. And it is a thing that it's not talked about. It's not a said thing. You don't sit down with your mom and dad and say, hey, I'm trying to make you happy. And they say, well, you better. And then you leave like, oh my gosh, I have to do this every day. How do I do it? It's not a talked about thing, okay? So if this is a new idea to you, you need to get an understanding of, are you making decisions in your life to please your parents? Now, I know you and I have talked about this plenty off air. We've talked about this enough. I understand how you had focused on pleasing your dad before he passed away. And that was a kryptonite in your life. Mm-hmm. Can you dive into that a little more about how that affected your mental health?
So Dad had this amazing way of, I'm very fortunate to have had a dad who spoke life into my life with phrases such as, Scott, you're going to be an amazing man someday. I realize how absurdly wonderful that is in a culture that so many men don't do that for their children or have received it from their fathers. But my problem was, and I'll try to make this connection as easily as I can. My problem was I believed Dad. Like, I'm going to be an amazing man someday. Which meant, in my mind at the time, that I was going to come through. I wouldn't be a loser, and I wouldn't be a sinner. Right. So, in other words, I was going to be a hero, not a villain.
Right.
And I was going to be Jesus, not Satan.
Right. Right.
They were the extremes. Right. It was boom, boom, and of course, once I started to lose in games, and which is a natural thing. And then once I started to struggle with more adult-like sins as I grew, oh man, I felt like a loser, and I felt like a villain.
And once you get out of your parents' house, obviously we've all done this, when you get out of your parents' house and out of your parents' sort of shadow in a way, you have to make your own decisions, and sometimes those decisions don't work out correctly. Maybe you go out and you buy a new car. Okay, maybe you go out and you're like, hey, I bought a new car, right on, and you're just so excited about it, and you show your dad, and your dad's like, oh, that's cool. So how much was this? And you tell him, and he goes, how are you going to make that payment? And you go, oh, yeah, no, I got this. I got it. No big deal. And then you realize, oh, no, I probably should have had some better counsel on this, because that's a big decision.
Right.
And so that could seem like a fail, and that all of a sudden can put more anxiety into your life.
Well, Carrie Ann, that's a good tie-in with Carrie Ann and myself, because we were young in our marriage. We hadn't figured out all the communication stuff. And in that example right there, that's essentially what I did with Carrie Ann. Was I went out and I bought the car. It just happened to be an Xbox.
Right.
And I get home, and instead of talking about it, we had she had effectively said, you buy that thing, don't come home.
But that's where your TV was, so you had to come home. Right? Good job. When you got home, did you just rush over, unbox it, so geeked, plug it all in? Meanwhile, she's standing there like, why are you here?
And what's so sad about that is what's so sad about that whole situation, even looking back, is I love sharing those moments with people.
Right.
And it was out of character for me to do that. Really, but I think I was just exerting some type of authority. I'm the man of the house, whatever it was.
That's a whole other episode, because that can also be the kryptonite that maybe some men struggle with. A lot of men struggle with that. Like, I am the man of the house now, right? Like,
I can do this.
I can make my own decisions.
But the problem for me was that I didn't get to share that moment with Carrie. Right. Like, she could give a rip about video games and Halo, know. But at the same time, she should be given the opportunity at least to enjoy that at the right time, and I chose the wrong time.
Right. And it was just a situation where you weren't looking out for her.
No.
And you weren't protecting her. You weren't protecting your marriage in. And I know that seems strange. We always think like protecting your marriage is some like, I don't know,
gotta protect your marriage.
Some weird saying about like don't go to like the strip club. That's not the beginning of how protecting your marriage is. That's the end. Okay, so if you're already at that point, you need to reel it in a bit. And I think
a whole lot,
right, and I think that these are the small decisions that we have to take as young married men, but we also have to all understand.
Yes.
I mean, this is men and women as well. As a young married couple, you have to communicate through this, and you have to share interests with each other. We touched on this in the first episode, not to hide who you are while you're dating, because guess what? At some point, who you are is going to come out, and if your significant other doesn't know about this, it could catch him off guard.
So I will add that there is a distinction between, and this is just what happened to me, those things that you set aside for a while, and then those things that you hide. So
maybe not hide. You had different interests at the time. You were involved in different things.
Well, and that's my point. Right. There is a distinction between those things that I had been involved in, such as school and just making sure that, and then those things that you would hide that are shameful, like an addiction of some type.
Absolutely.
And in this particular case, that wasn't an addiction. It was just a thing that.
A hobby.
I stepped in it, man, though.
Well, now, I mean, this can work in any way. This can be like, hey, there's a brand new fishing pole out. Oh, I didn't know you fished. Oh, yeah, I'm going to go out and grab this new $500 fishing pole.
What?
I don't know if that's cheap or expensive. I don't know about fishing. But either way, like, let's just say, and the wife's not involved in that decision with you. Instead, maybe you could have gone shopping together, made it into an experience like, hey, check this out. Oh, I've really been wanting one of these. Now, I know from a man's perspective, if I was with my wife and we were out shopping and hanging out together, and she saw a purse, let's say, or shoes, and she just said, I love these. I really want them. I'd be like, let's make it happen. Let's do that. Because I want her to have those things that make her happy in life. And I know they're just things, but that's important and fun. So we have to tie this back into the time when we made decisions based on our parents' approval. Now we have to make them based on our wife's approval or significant other's approval. Can this be a trigger, this people-pleasing / what we're calling your kryptonite, which is parent-pleasing? How can we kind of tie that in as the kryptonite?
Well, I know that the entire basis of my fear and the chaos in my life, but probably both before and after this situation, really did stem from a misunderstanding of my kryptonite, of who I was trying to please. You know, it's. I don't even think it's super healthy to have my wife as the primary person that I'm supposed to please anyway.
Absolutely.
I think that's really, really important.
You serve her, but you're not always trying to please her. That'd be weird.
Clearly,
Right.
I need to be pleasing and being obedient to
God the Father.
God's
Absolutely.
ways. So,
which then trickles down into every relationship in our lives.
correct. And so that connection is, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question.
My question was
properly,
completely clunky, but my question is that how do we take doing something together with our wives and making that into a better situation than you did? You ran off on your own, spent money you didn't have, okay? And how you would have pleased your parents in that same sort of a way. You were with them in that life, in that time, and you would please them. How, when you moved into your relationship with your wife?
Let me go with that. I got you. I can take it from this angle. The fear and chaos were a very real situation with Carrie Ann, whereas they wouldn't have been with my parents. I would have, the fear of displeasing my parents would have stopped me in my tracks from going and buying that thing, and the ensuing chaos that would come.
Right.
Or in
our minds, of
the
course.
ensuing chaos.
Yeah.
And in my mind, that hadn't transitioned to Carrie Ann in any healthy way. Clearly, that was an unhealthy thing.
Right.
And the fear potentially that I had of not being the authority, the man in the house, was then, and the feeling of potential chaos if I didn't grab that control right now.
Right.
That was what was happening in that moment.
This is a whole new episode right here. I mean, it really can be. Because fear and chaos obviously are things of Satan. They're things of the evil one. And they're not anything that God wants, because he wants us ultimately to have faith in him. Okay? And that he will guide us in our decisions if we're actually chasing him with our whole hearts. In this situation, obviously, and I can only speak from my own perspective and what you've shared with me, is that the pleasing of the parents seems more long-lasting than the pleasing of the wife. You figured, Carrie Ann will get over it. That's okay. My wife, anything that I've made a bad decision, I've upset her, we've had an argument, whatever it is, I just figure at some point she's going to forgive me. We're going to move on. We're going to get past this. We're going to communicate better, and I'm going to handle this situation different next time. With my parents, on the other hand, okay, I am not in their presence every day. I'm not around them all the time. So if I make a big decision like, hey, I'm going to, move to Texas, right? Then how they respond to that is an expectation, in a way, put on my decisions, okay? So what we need to understand is that we cannot live in fear of other people's expectations on our lives. Not our parents, not our wives. We have to live in God's will, in making good decisions based on his will every day in our lives.
Yeah.
Now, if we're doing that, people who are believers, as our parents are, people as our wives who are believers, they will see that, hey, you know what? God is doing something in your life. Can I be part of that with you? And I think that makes a healthier situation than just, I'm just going out and doing this. Do you have any final thoughts on that? Sorry.
No, man, that's not a sorry. I really appreciate your willingness to dive into this. And yes, I do have some final thought, or a final thought, in regard to, I do believe that ultimately it's critical that we as parents speak life into
Amen.
our children
Amen. 100.
and to our significant others.
Absolutely.
You know, how critical is it to say you're amazing and who you're going to become is spectacular. And the sky's the limit. Whatever.
No expectations, though.
It's like loaning somebody money.
Oh, here we go.
Or
There's
not
another
loaning.
episode.
Let me rephrase that. Giving somebody money.
There you go.
Without expectation. Right. It's that thing, somebody's in trouble, you give it to them without, and if they go buy cigarettes and alcohol with it,
it's on them.
Yeah, which is why you want to be smart with who you give your money to. Right. But if you get the point. Yep. At the end of the day, it's our job to speak that life like my dad did for me, and then let them work it out. Right. Because for me, I created this heroic Frankenstein is what I called it. But my dad did not do that to me.
No, that was your choice.
I did that to me.
Right.
And I think that that's part of what I would leave with everyone is speak that life and let that be between them and God. It's a necessary thing.
Well said. So we talk some heavy stuff, and that's what we're doing. But we're going to have fun with it if we can. We're going to try to make it light. But some of this stuff is just hard to get through and process, but it's very, very important to your mental health, to your relationship health, and relationship health is everything. I mean, that's everything. We have a relationship or build a relationship with everyone.
Yeah.
Our parents, our kids,
they're the only
wives,
things that
everything.
we take to eternity with us, relationships.
Right, and I think this is good that we talk through this. It is going to be tough at times. There's not solid answers to all this, but we do need to understand. We need to understand what's affecting our mental health. Okay, so this can be a trigger. Kryptonite, heroic disgrace. Okay, connect with us, heroicdisgrace.com, worshiphero.com. Obviously, you can get the book on Amazon, Heroic Disgrace, Scott Box. We're just going to do it again. We're just going to keep doing this, and I think every episode we're going to talk deeper and jump into some other topics that are really going to help you guys and us work through life.
Thanks, Clint.
You're welcome. See you guys later.